So in this chat, you're going to hear from Alex Barbas. Now, Alex ran 50Ks a day and then decided that wasn't hard enough. So he's taking on the challenge to run from Sydney to Perth back to Sydney, which is 7,800 kilometers. He has a goal of doing it under 100 days, and he's going to be running roughly about 80Ks a day. So we just chatted all things about what he's doing to prep for it, how he's feeling, and we'll have another chat with him when he actually finishes the run in over 100 days' time. But yeah, enjoy the conversation. Well, look, this is going to be a bit of a different one anyway, because I'm not doing the run. You haven't actually done the challenge yet, but I was looking, and you've done heaps of challenges, man. This is not your first one.
Yeah. I've done a couple. Yeah.
So you've run 12 hours straight, and you did 50Ks a day for 50 days. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
How far apart were those?
First was on the 12-hour run on the Bronte Hill was the 12th of April in 2024, and then I started the 50Ks June 1. So it was
Of
only
last year.
Yeah, last year. So both were last year. Yeah.
50Ks a day for 50 days. How did you go with that?
That was tough. That was I mean, look, the first probably four days were pretty hard. Day 1, 2 was all right, but then by the fourth, I think it was more shock than anything. I think it was more like, all right, like my body's, sort of asking questions here, and what am I doing, and how is it going to feel after 150 kilometers? But by probably the sixth, seventh day, I got pretty used to it. And then there were sort of days on probably 2 or 3 weeks afterwards where I was pretty sore, as you can imagine. But then again, it just like resetted. So day 8 was tough. Day 21, I think, was tough, and day 32 was tough. So I just had these blocks where it adjusted, and then it spiked again, then it adjusted.
Physically tough, or as in that was like a mental unraveling?
Oh, physical for sure. Yeah. The mental was okay because there's always an end date, right? I'm not going to be running for the next, 100 years. So I started June 1 and was finishing July 20. I was working in between, so that was probably one of the hardest things as well. So my day looked like this. I'd wake up at 7 a.m., go to work. Fortunately, we have a chef here at work, which is great. So a lot of the nutrition and food was taken care of. So breakfast was taken care of and lunch was taken care of, which is awesome. So I'd work from 7 till around about 5:36. I only live 5-10 minutes from home, so quickly get home. I'd make a jam sandwich and a honey sandwich. I'd take a Coke and a Solo, or a Fanta and a Solo, or whatever it was, some dates and a Red Bull, and then I'd run down to Centennial Park and do 12 laps it was. And then run to Centennial, do the 12 laps, run home, and then that would make up the 50 kilometers.
Jesus. Okay. It's pretty full on, man. You say pretty blasé, but like 50Ks a day for 50 days is pretty fucking crazy.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things whenever I do a big run, or even if you do, let's say, 50 kilometers, it's thinking about the 50 kilometers as a whole. That's where you can really start to unravel, or that number gets in your head, and then if you're checking your watch every so often, you're like, oh great, I've got 31 kilometers to go, right? Where if you break it down in small sections, it becomes more manageable. And that's what I would do for every single run. So for every run that I did around Centennial was 4 laps, have a quick break, have the dates and the Red Bull and some water. And then I would do another, what was it? It was another 3 laps on the back of that. Pause, have another, have my Coke and jam sandwich or honey sandwich. Then it was another 3 laps, same thing again, jam, honey sandwich. And then it was 2 laps. So once I got past the initial, the 4 laps, right, I was like, it's less laps as a block from here on in. Whereas if I thought, oh, I've done 4 laps, I need to do another 8, that's where, it becomes pretty challenging.
So you finished that in, well, you started last year in June, finished that in, well, 50 days later,
Yeah.
July-ish.
hmm
How long between finishing that did you come up with the idea for what we'll talk about shortly?
It was in the lead up. So after I'd finished the 12 hours on Bronte Hill, I thought to myself, well, I actually went to Thailand with work on a work trip, and I remember I was sitting on the plane. I was thinking, oh, look, I'd like to maybe, push myself maybe a little bit more, or what's next, kind of thing. So I was thinking to myself, look, I wouldn't mind. I know some people have done 42 kilometers a day or a marathon a day for 42 days, and I thought to myself, well, I may as well round up. May as well do 8 extra days and 8 kilometers for each day. So I said to myself, look, I'll go out and run a couple 50 kilometers and see how I feel. But you never know until you're actually in it, right? Like, I can plan all these things and train my, mind and body and get the nutrition, but until you're actually doing the thing, that's where you find out, all right, can I do this or can I not do this? And mentally I knew I could do it. It was just getting, past day 5, 6, 7, 8. So I came up with the idea of the 50 kilometers a day, 50 days, probably about 2 or 3 weeks after the run on the Bronte Hill.
And then after the 50 Ks a day, 50 days, how long from that to the 7,800 kilometer run?
So during the 50 kilometers a day, once I got to about maybe day 20 odd, I was like, all right, I know I can get through this, right? Even if I have to walk half of it, run half of it for one of the days, I was like, I know I can do this. It was taking about 6 hours or 5.5, 6 hours a day. So I was like, I know that I can get past this. And when I do, I want to do something else that maybe no one has done before, or do something that is even bigger. And so, effectively, the run that I'm going to be doing on September is double the 50 Ks a day for 50 days. So, yeah, it was around about 3 weeks after, or day 20-ish into the run.
Oh shit. So you came up with this new challenge idea format while you were still doing a challenge format.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's great. That's interesting because personally, when I'm in a challenge, all I want to fucking do is not be in the challenge.
yeah. Yeah, I think there's always, okay. I don't love the mentality of what's next, what's next, what's next, what's next. I know it obviously it sounds like I'm saying these things, uh, but at the same time, I do want to do um, I do want to do something that is always, challenging for myself, and this next challenge is much larger than just piecing together the run itself. Right, there's all these things around it. There's logistics, there's crew, there's funding, there's seeing things that I've never seen before, and obviously this is a massive distance. So I really want to make sure that I'm, piecing all these things outside of the run together. So that's a challenge in itself, right?
Yeah. So look, let's talk about the challenge. So you're running 7,800 Ks. You're running from Sydney to Perth, and then you've decided for some fucking reason you're going to turn around and you're going to go back the other way and do it again. Tell me
Yeah,
how that
sure.
came about.
Yeah.
Like, talk to me about it.
Yeah, so I guess a bit of a backstory. So I'm from Perth originally. I grew up in Perth and only moved to Sydney at the end of 2022. And I've volunteered with Starlight since 2015 or 16. And so I did the run on the Bronte Hill. That was with Starlight raising. So that it was all around like 12. So it was 12 hours on April 12th to raise 12,000, which I did, and that was awesome. And so with the 50 Ks, that was more just a personal challenge. But with obviously this one, it's going to be through or with Starlight, right, to raise funds for Starlight. So the goal is to raise 780,000, which is a large amount, and it is 7,800 kilometers from Sydney to Perth, and then Perth to Sydney. So I'm going to be running home, and I think that's going to be the destination point in Perth, and then turning around and coming back. So the goal is 80 kilometers a day, or around 80 kilometers a day, for just under 100 days.
Yeah, oh God, which is like it's pretty much running halfway across. Well, you're running across Australia twice, but I guess 7,800 k's is half the circumference of Australia as well, right? So I think the total distance that like Sean Bell did was 13-ish thousand. So you're running like 60-70% around Australia too. Like it's a mammoth of a goal, man. And I've never seen anyone do it this way. And I'm actually my thought process is when I hear that, it just sounds even more monotonous because of the fact that you have to go back. How do you think
Mm.
that will play on your mind?
Well, I'm hoping because a lot of the time when you run to one spot and come back, it's always quicker, right? I always think that.
Yeah,
So
maybe.
I'm hoping that, I'm like, oh, okay, I recognize this place or this town or this, pub or this roadhouse or whatever it is. And so I'm hoping that when I run past it again, I can think, okay, well, I'm actually not that far. But the other thing is in the 7,800 kilometers, yes, it's massive. But if I'm breaking it down again, just in the days, that's where I can just say to myself, okay, well, I just need to get through, this block here because the goal is 80 kilometers a day. So it'll be 8 lots of 10 kilometers broken down. And then even within the 10 kilometers, there's going to be times where, I'll probably be walking to, refuel or hydrate myself. So it's not that I'm going to be running for every single kilometer. There's definitely going to be some times where I'm going to be walking and eating and refueling. So, break that down to each day. I know that obviously still sounds like a lot, but I think that's the only way I want to look at this is just look at it per day within those eight blocks of 10 kilometers.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I agree. That's definitely the way you've got to do it. But it does yeah, it doesn't change the objective part of it being still such a crazy run.
Mm.
Um, Are you with the timings? So 80 kilometers. Why did you choose 80? Why not 90? Why not 60? Like, I'm just interested on how you've arrived at that number.
So 80 kilometers. So I've just been working with my coach in terms of the hours on the road, right? So the other thing was the timing in which setting off. So initially it was going to be in July, but with the daylight and with not as much daylight in the day, starting at let's say 6 o'clock and finishing at 5:30, right? Once the sun goes down in the middle of Australia, that's it, right? There's not any more light. Obviously, you can manufacture that light, but I'd rather do it with when you have more light throughout the day. In terms of the 80 kilometers, we've worked out that over a 12 to let's say, 14-hour day, breaking that down, it's pretty achievable with a combination of run, refueling, pausing, and there's going to be, I guess, blocks in the 80 kilometers where, I'll be, pausing for maybe, 10, 15 minutes. For refueling and making sure I'm hydrated.
You've gone from obviously doing the 50 to, well, 50-50, we'll just call it for simplicity's sake. And then you've pretty much doubled it, but it's really more than double when you think about it because you're doing twice the distance for twice the amount of time, which compounded is probably four to 10 times harder, I reckon.
Mm.
What gives you the belief that you can?
Uh, it's a really good question. I think there's always two things when you're doing any kind of challenge, right? I think number one, it's a bit of like it has to be a bit of delusion, like it just has to be. And then the other thing is just having strong self belief. Where that comes from, that's a really good question. I think it's just it's reps. It's going out and doing the thing, and that's all. You can only go off the evidence previously, and so I know what day 21, what was it, 8, 21, and 32 felt like, and I know that it's tough, but at the end of the day, my other thought process is, I mean, touch wood, I'm not going to die, right? If you're
Mm.
running, I'm not going to like. You know what? If I do die, if I do collapse doing this, like at least I go out doing what I'm enjoying, right? Maybe that's not the best way to think about it, but I I get the belief just by doing it, and that's the only way you can look at these things. Yeah, there's nothing that I look at or say, I'm able to do this because I am eating this particular thing or I'm wearing this particular shoe. It all comes from, obviously up here, and all comes from what I've done previously.
Do you think that you're able to mitigate some of that fear because, like you just said, then if you don't make it, if you die, it just is what it is. You seem to have that mentality where it's like, well, I'm not just doing this for the challenge. I'm doing this because it means something to me. So the result is less important, I guess, was what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, yeah, I guess so. I mean, it is important, and I don't want to, go out with a mentality that, the result isn't important. It is, and raising the funds for Starlight, like that's the main reason why, I'm doing this and why I want to, set such a big goal. I think just again, just coming back to breaking it down. I don't. I try not to think too much about the what ifs or what if I don't make it. There's always going to be problems that arise, right? It's just about problem solving, and also, trusting my body and my mind. Which I've been very lucky, body wise, right? Even in the 50 kilometers for 50 days. If I had major issues during that, I probably wouldn't be undertaking this. But to be perfectly honest, I didn't have really any issues in my body at all. My left toe was a bit sore, and my knee had a bit of issues for probably half a day, but there was no ongoing problems at all with my body, even after the 50Ks. So I was very lucky to get looked after by the team at the running room, and they've been awesome in the lead up to this. So that's really another thing that gives me a little bit more confidence as well.
Yeah, you sound really confident. Like you sound like really easygoing with it. Like it doesn't seem like you're about to just take on one of the most insane challenges that I've ever seen. And I love it. Like it's great, but it is I guess I'm intrigued with the mindset that gives you that like just I don't know, casual slash confident approach. And obviously you're confident in your ability, but like you said, you're not getting too hung up on the distance. You're just taking it as it comes, and that's clearly showing.
Yeah, yeah, and also I've had a lot of I've got a great coach, great dietitian, team at the running room. I've spoken to a couple of people who have taken on larger challenges like this. So you know I've got awesome support and a great base. And then the other side is I don't know how my body is going to you know uh, react to something like this. Like I'm confident that it's going to be that it's going to hold up. But who knows, right? And then that also gives me a bit of excitement
Mm,
because it is a challenge that uh, you can't plan this entire thing out and have everything so methodically down to an absolute um, route. Well, obviously the route is really important, but there's going to be days where things happen, and I can't control every single day. I mean, there might be one day where there's insane storms, right? If that happens, okay, well, what do I do? Do I pause for the day? Do I get out and try, chip away, and maybe I reduce the kilometers to maybe it's 50 kilometers in that day, right? But then
mm,
obviously I've got to make it up along the way. Or maybe there's days where I feel amazing and I push more towards maybe 85, 95, maybe even 100. So there's all these things that, you can plan for before you go out and do something like this, but there's also, you know, days where I don't know how it's going to look.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of unexpecteds, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I am
Yeah, sure.
curious, right? Because when with people that would listen to this would just probably say you're an athlete, right? They would put you in this, but you're in what's your job title?
I work in property. I'm an advisor, so I'm not an athlete at all. Like my idea of an athlete is still like the Usain Bolts of the world, right?
Mm.
Those like track athletes. They're insanely fit. They're insanely obviously quick. Like, I don't look like a runner. Like and I think there's been a few people who have echoed the same sort of thought process, because they grew up watching all these Olympic athletes, and you look at them, and you're like, okay, that is an athlete. Whereas me, I'm not an athlete. I grew up playing sport. I obviously fell into running, and I really enjoy running. But I'm not anywhere close to their level. I'm just someone who likes to take on challenges, and likes to push myself.
What do you reckon will be the hardest part? I mean, obviously you've mentioned logistical, but logistical aside, what do you reckon will be the hardest thing?
Uh, I think there's probably going to be a day, I don't know when it will be, where it will probably all hit me at once. What I'm doing, how many kilometers I've got to go, what day it is. I really hope that's towards the back end, because I can just grind the rest out. Uh, I think one of the things that I'm probably most worried about is the things around the run. Like, I mean, I've never driven a caravan for, more than 5 days, right? Like, I mean, not that I'm going to be driving, but what if there's flat tires? What if there's if things, if the car breaks down? What if the generators are broken? Right? There's all these things that and if you're in the middle of nowhere, that can add 2 or 3 or 4 days. And I want to obviously complete the run in less than 100 days and stick to the 80 kilometers, but there's going to be days where things just don't pan out. That's where I'm probably most worried about things. I mean, I've heard the road trains, and I've heard running across the nullarbor not very safe. So maybe thinking about a few of those things as well are going to be important to the run.
Yeah, it's going to be absolutely cooked, man. Like, there's going to be the logistical side, putting that back in is an absolute nightmare. How do you
Mm.
even go about finding someone to come along for 100 days? Like, are you relying on family or?
Yeah, so the goal is I'll have a mate crew from Sydney to Perth, and then obviously being from Perth, my folks are going to help from Perth back to Sydney. So yeah, I mean, even the education around like setting up for the day and what it looks like during the day. Whether we go into roadhouses, or park up on the side of the road, or in parks. Right, this is all part of the planning. So there's so much outside of the run that I've been doing. Right, it's not. I'm hoping that once the run starts, the run is going to be the easiest thing, because I'm going to be in it. That's all I can do. Whereas right now, there's speaking, with brands and sponsors and partners, and speaking with the operation side, and getting the caravan and getting the car, and all these things that require this. It's not just, hey, go out and run, and that's that.
Yeah, I don't think people expect the logistical workload when they choose to take these on until they actually get into it and they realize that every intricate detail needs to be thought through. And
Mm.
every intricate detail that isn't thought through becomes an undoing during the actual challenge.
Yeah.
But the good thing is, when you do start, it becomes someone else's problem, which is nice.
Yeah. Actually, coming back to thinking of the question that you asked before, what do I think is one of the things that maybe frightens me a bit? Honestly, it's probably my stomach, and I think I might have said this too earlier. Is that with all these things in terms of training your mind and body and whatnot, the one thing that I have had not issues, but when you go for a run and maybe you get 5 or 6 kilometers in, and then you're like, oh, I've actually got to go to the toilet, right? So if that happens in the middle of the Nullarbor, I mean, obviously there's going to be a couple of times, or many times, that I'm going to have to pop off to the side of the road. But you can have different supplements to prevent that. But like having a really strong stomach, and that might sound weird, has been super important over the last 9 months for me. So I've been working really closely with my dietitian to understand what food groups work, what sits well, what doesn't sit well, what I enjoy as well, because you don't want to be eating the same food for 100 days. You want to, change it up. And also, if I'm breaking it down to 8 lots of 10 kilometers, on those 8 blocks, I want to be having different food along the way and get excited for that, right? Like mentally at the end of the day, if I'm drinking a whatever it is drink, right? Like a solo, for example, love solo. I'm going to be so excited to have that solo. And when I have it, it's also going to mentally register, okay, the day's done now. So I think, having those little things throughout the day is, again, very, it's super important.
Yeah, shouts out Solo if you're listening. Free sponsorship.
Yeah.
So you're with the food. Have you got a calorie target? Have you guys worked that out yet? What it looks like?
Yeah, it's going to be around about 9,000. So with the 50 Ks a day for 50 days, I was burning around about, I think it was high sixes throughout the day. And I think that was either a combination of just resting plus exercise, or maybe it wasn't. I can't quite recall. But yeah, it was, I mean, if you have a look, it was quite. I've had a look at this in the past. Is if you have a look at, I guess my face on day one versus day 50, it goes super gaunt. Like I think I lost over 8 kilos in
Shit.
that run, or over those 50 days. So um, yeah, trying to get in as much as I'm going to be able to stomach for this run. Again, vital, right? Because I don't want to overeat where my stomach's too full. I got to make sure that when I'm eating, I have in certain blocks, because if you eat too quickly, it's pretty hard to run on the back of that. So breaking it down into liquid form as well. That's something that I've been training over the last 3 or 4, well, actually longer now, probably 6 months.
Are you worried that you won't be able to keep it down, or to put it bluntly, are you worried you're just going to come out the other side?
Bit of both, to
Yeah.
be honest.
Not 9,000 calories is extremely, I mean, like it's obviously seems like the right number, but it is a very high target to hit each day, every day for 100 days. Like Eddie
Yeah.
Hall does, what, 8,000. And that guy is huge.
Yeah, yeah. Eight 9,000's a lot. So yeah, liquid form's going to be my best friend. So just blending things up. When I was talking to my dietitian, he was saying, if you can try to get like ice creams and donuts and blend that up with, some uh, like high mass protein powder. And he was like, try to put make it as dense as possible, with as many calories in there as possible, so that you can just drink it, rather than trying to eat 9,000 calories, like
Yeah, it's too
that's a
hard.
job. That's a job in itself, right? That sounds tiring. Whereas drinking it, it's going to be pretty thick, but that's
It's
the
with a short distance challenge, right? For 24, 48 hours, you always just drop protein. Like it just, but
Mm,
with this challenge, because of the actual length, you would definitely have to factor in things like micronutrients, make sure you've
mm,
got protein base for each day.
mhm.
So you factored those things in, and you've got a plan of how you're going to kind of get a certain amount of protein and micronutrients each day as well, or?
Yeah, yeah, I do. So I've got two great partners who have come on board. So they're going to be supplying protein and quite a lot of the food. But most of the food is going to come from, just going out and picking it up and then coming back to
7-Eleven
me's.
pies.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
this is the other thing that my dietitian was saying. He was like, you get to a certain point where you just need the calories. Yes,
Mm,
obviously, you're trying to get like, I'd love to have, bananas and berries and fresh fruit, and whatnot, and nice vegetables, but it's just not going to be possible. So, where I'll have that, at roadhouses and whatnot, or definitely, be having as many of those as I can. But when you're in the middle of nowhere, you just have to, have noodles and pastas and uh, protein powders and whatever else you can get in.
yeah, when I was on a crew for a mate. I think I was telling you when I saw you the other day that he ran from Sydney to Melbourne, and pretty
Mm.
much, like, obviously we had the stuff that was prepped, but you just take full advantage of whatever you see, and that could
Mm.
be servos, like, and the excitement on his face when we would come back with a pie versus
Mm.
the same thing we've been giving him for 12 hours straight. So I get what you mean. Like, there's optimal versus possible as well. And like
Yeah,
you've got to really be able to just kind of, you pretty much got to have an idea, but just take advantage of every calorie you possibly can.
yeah, 100%, 100%. And I mean, there's certain food groups that, I mean, like a pie, for example, doesn't really sit that well with me. But let's say like a burger, right? Would like that would be, if you haven't had a burger for 2 weeks and you come into some roadhouse and it's like best burgers in, I don't know, middle of nowhere, and you have that, like after a long day, it's like
Yeah,
beautiful.
psychological lift. That's a morale
Yeah.
boost.
Yeah.
And that stuff is great. That there's nothing better than when you're like deep into a challenge and someone comes in with some like fresh food and
Mm.
just gives you that psychological lift. It's so
Mm.
nice.
Yeah, yeah, it's next level. The other thing that's going to be so important is sleep, and I
Mm,
speak about this to probably most people is that when you do any run, any exercise, right? If you're coming off the back of an awesome sleep, and you've kind of optimized your sleep, so to speak, that gives you obviously so much fuel and energy, and it is the most important. Like it is the superpower for everything. So I found that when I was doing the 50Ks, if I had a crappy sleep the night before, it would be so much harder.
mm.
Whereas on the weekends, when I had more time to sleep in, until obviously I can't do that on this run, but if I could get 12 hours, 14 hours of sleep and recovery, I knew the next day the 50 kilometers was, I don't want to say easy, but it was easier
Yeah.
because during the week I was working, I was getting probably 7 hours sleep. Um, and then rolling into work, and I was a bit of a zombie. But then once Friday hit, I was like, great, I know I can sleep in until 8 or 9 o'clock. I can go out, I can do the run, I can sleep after. So for this run, if I can knock out the 80 kilometers and be done by, let's say, 11 hours, 12 hours, and be in bed
Mm.
and have 11 hours, 10, 11 hours sleep, like that's gonna put
Oh,
me in a really good
massive
position
difference.
the next day. Yeah.
Massive difference. And I mean, I guess that kind of answers some of the question I had before about like why 80, because
Mhm.
80 does give you, I guess, if all things go well, it gives you a full night's rest.
Mhm.
Where 100, unless you're an absolute elite runner, puts you in a position where you're potentially getting not a good sleep every night, especially when you
Yeah.
factor in logistical issues, getting to places, organizing food, etc.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And it's also the timing in the day, right? Like if I was to do 100 kilometers, I could be pushing out into, I don't know, let's say 6, 7 p.m. at night.
Mm.
And then, by the time you wind down and rest, and then you got to get up again at, let's say, 5 or even earlier, you're not getting obviously as many hours.
What time are you expecting to start and finish? I mean, all things go well.
Uh, in terms of the dates, or in terms
Yeah,
of
sorry,
the
like on an actual individual day. So you wake up at what, you start at what, and you finish at what?
start at 5:30. Between 5 to 5:30. If I get up at 5 and I'm running by 5:15, that's awesome. And then wrapping up the day, I mean 80 Ks. I'd be hoping for 5:30, 5:36, let's say.
Yeah, and thank you. What's that? 8 minute. gives you about 9 minutes per K.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But I mean, look, there might be days where I finish it at 4 or 4:30, and if I'm finishing at that time, that's awesome, right?
Mm,
That's huge. That's plenty of time to wind down, recover, get to bed early. So yeah, I mean, obviously I can wrap up early in the day, but like I said before, who knows? There might be days where I feel shocking and I need that, that extra time on the road, or I might feel great and, maybe I run to 85, 86 Ks. And if I can do that, if I can push a little bit more than 80, compounded over a long period of time, it's obviously going to, accelerate the timeline for the run.
yeah. We'll almost finish up. I am just curious though. I've got one more question for you. So I was
Yeah.
reading on the site that you put together. You're talking about how you love like pushing limits and stuff. I guess I just want to understand in your own words, what is it about doing these challenges? Charity aside, adventure, I guess, well, adventure could be a part of it, but like, what is it that draws you to this suffering?
It's a really good question. I love the idea that when I'm older, I don't know, say 70, 80, whatever it is, and I can look back and say, I ran from Sydney to Perth and Perth to Sydney, and that's something that no one can ever take away from me. That's something that really motivates me. And I think it's when you do anything, right? When you start a business, you take a risk, right? You've taken a business, yourself, you and Sam, and you're gonna look back in, I don't know, 20 years, 30 years, whenever, maybe when you're 70 or 80, and say, oh, how good was it when we started? How good was it when we kicked off and we didn't have everything down to an absolute T. We didn't know what the next 12 months had looked like. We didn't have all these sponsors that you guys do have now, right? So it's that, unknown and adventure and fear of what if I never do this? That's what really drives me, because I think honestly, if you train and you dedicate yourself to something, I'm not special. I don't have, I was never a star athlete. I was never like the best runner. I wasn't any of that. But what I did do is I thought, okay, well, let's just start day one, right? Let's just try run 5K, 10K, 15K, half marathon, full marathon, whatever it is, 50Ks, 80Ks. I strongly believe anyone can get there. I'm not special. I know people who are way better runners than me that could probably do this. But I've just put myself, in a position where I think mentally and physically I can do it. But the thing that drives me is, yeah, I don't want to get to a certain age where I regret anything or say to myself, oh damn, I should have done that, or I should have taken that risk, or why didn't I do that? Like, I was in a position to do it. And look, also, I guess age comes into it, right? Like, I couldn't do this when I'm 60 or 70 years old. So I think to myself, I'm in a good spot. Why not just why not just have a crack? Because the absolute worst thing is that, yeah, I don't complete the run, but like, I had a crack, right? And that's all anyone can ask, and have a proper crack, not just, hey,
Mm.
just try this. But yeah, I'm pretty confident that I can do this. And yeah, it's just a why not mentality.
Beautifully said, man. And I couldn't agree more. I think it's one of the most beautiful things is like creating these core memories. And core memories can happen, involuntarily, or we can create them ourselves. And when you put yourself out there to do something like this, or whether it be a challenge, like you said, a physical challenge, a business challenge, etc., it forces you to have these core memories. And then when you look back on them, they're always the best parts of your life. And
100%. Anything that you do that's really hard in the moment, you look back on 6 months, 12 months, years later, and you're like, I'm so glad I went through that. Or I'm so glad that happened. Or, yeah, it was really hard, but how good was it when I finished that? Or I got to that, finished the course, or yeah, started the business, or got the job, or
mm,
whatever it is, right? It's that after feeling that is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually had this we were at dinner last night and we were talking about camping we went on, a group of us, and it was pouring down and snowing the whole time. And we said it was the worst camping experience we've ever had.
Mm.
But we still to this day talk about it every single time we catch up, and it's become one of these core memories.
Yeah.
And it's just such a funny example because it's fresh in my head of how every time something sucks, if you're doing it through with people or you're doing it from an adventure point of view, there's very, very, very rarely do you look back on it and say, I wish I didn't do that. I can't even think of one example from an adventure perspective where I've gone, fuck, I wish I didn't do that. Can you?
Yeah. Yeah, so when I was in the army when I was how old was I, 19, and we went outfield and it was called defensive operations, and it was torrential rain for probably 10 days straight. It was awful. It was in the middle of Hunter Valley, somewhere in the middle of absolutely nowhere. It was bucketing rain, wet the whole time. Like we had got food rations and they were awful. I just remember having this like salmon pasta. Oh, it was shocking. And we had like picket, which is where you have to basically get up every you're on the hour. Someone's
Yeah,
watching on the hour
staggering.
every hour. It was shocking. It was awful. And then we had to dig trenches, and we hit granite, and like my hands were just so numb from. Anyway, it was a really really challenging experience, especially when I was 19. But I remember that is one thing that I never ever forget, right?
Mm,
Like I always, and I can come back to that experience. And that's the other thing, is that you can draw back on all these experiences where you're like, okay, that was really hard, but how good was it when I finish? And maybe for this run, because I've done, a lot of these sort of challenges in the army and whatever it is, I can reflect and say, okay, I went through that and I got through it and I didn't die. So let's just get through this day and move on to the next, right? Because that's all you can do. But yeah, you're right. When you reflect back on all these really tough times, you have a laugh, you smile about it, you're like, yeah, damn, that was really hard. But look where I'm at now, and let's move on to the next thing.
yeah, those army courses. So I did it as well. I didn't do DevOps. I did the mod too,
Mm.
but they're still like they're some of the best experiences because you're struggling with people. There's like this community element that,
Mm.
yeah, God, they're good. They're so
Yeah,
good. They're hard to
yeah.
articulate to someone who hasn't done it. But when you go through it, it's a weird, awesome type two experience. That's for
Mm.
sure.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it is very challenging. It's tough to explain to people just what you go through, because it is. Yeah, it's so specific, but internally what it's like, and there's stories, right? There's stories in
Mm.
your mind that you go back to. So yeah, those times were, yeah, they were tough, but they build more resilience.
Yeah, how good's waking up at 2 a.m., freezing cold, getting out of your sleeping bag to go stand and look at nothing for 2 hours? So good.
Shocking. Get kicked as you wake up when
Yeah.
it's your turn on picket. I mean, there's more explicit language that people used back in the day, but yeah, you get kicked and then you go out, look at nothing for a couple of hours, and then come back. But again, it's all part of obviously the training.
Yeah. Nice, man. Well, we might wrap there, but before we do, the people that want to support this run, where do they go? Obviously, you've got an $780,000 charity target. So, how do people
Mm.
get involved?
Yeah, so there'll be a link called Alex's Out and Back Run. That's where you can donate to the cause. I mean, I'll be uh, probably presenting, or not presenting. I'll be talking a lot about it on the run, of course, each and every day. And so on Instagram is where you can find me too. But the link is the number one spot to go and donate.
Beautiful, man. Well, good luck. We'll reconvene and we'll have to do a post 100-day recap, and I'm sure it'll be a very different, exciting
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah, I think so. I'm looking forward to that chat. That would be awesome.